What's up everybody? For you that don't know me, my name is Chris, aka Mr. Grow It, and today I got a discussion video for you. Let's talk about plant training. There are so many different things you can do when it comes to training plants. In this video, I'm not only going to tell you what I do when I train my plants, but I'm bringing a guest into this discussion, Pigeons420. He is a YouTuber with over 74,000 subscribers, and he has over 800 grow videos on his channel, and he's been doing YouTube since, I believe, the beginning of 2016. If you go to his channel, which I'll link down in the description section below, you'll see he does a ton of different plant training techniques. If you like these types of discussion videos, please hit that thumbs up button. That's an indication to whether or not I should make more of these videos. And yeah, let's get into the discussion. All right, got Pigeons here. How are you, dude?
Man, I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
Dude, I'm really excited to talk to you. It's been overdue conversation, I guess I'd say. It's the first time we've ever actually done a video chat like this, and we've both been doing YouTube videos for over 4 years now, right? 5 years. And dude, I'm super psyched. Thanks for coming on today.
Well, as I said, thanks for having me, man. But more importantly, thank you for being kind of a shining light in the community when it comes to bringing the community together and getting the best out of us. I saw the show that you did with Rob, and I really enjoyed the conversation. I thought you guys really brought the best out of each other when it came to the conversation, pulling out ideas, and I think this is a good avenue for content. So I'm really excited. Thanks for having me.
Cool. Yeah, no problem. Let's talk about plant training. So
Perfect.
Plant training. I really wanted to bring you into this discussion because I've been on your channel and I see you do a lot of different type of plant training techniques, and today you can talk about that. I don't think we're going to talk about all the plant training techniques that are out there, but
Okay.
definitely the most common. So low stress training, topping, if we can get into it, maybe do a little super cropping or FIMing, things like that. There are other ways to do it. We probably won't get into it all in this video, so just to give you viewers a heads up on that one. But let's start off with arguably the most common, which is low stress training. So first off, what is low stress training, right? So low stress training is really bending down and or tying down branches in order to allow other branches to grow up and be even with that canopy. Is kind of the basic definition of it. What's your definition of it? Is that kind of the same thing, or?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Low stress training. Trying not to create anything that's going to prolong the plant's life, and stress will certainly prolong the plant's life. So just gentle bending, tying down is a great way to put it. Tucking of just a tucking of leaves, I think is a low stress training. So yeah, just anything that's hands-on, that's not creating too much stress for the plant in general.
Why low stress training? What's the point of low stress training? So I think arguably the most common reason for low stress training is to increase the yield. So I've read on websites that it's up to a 40% increase in yield just from doing low stress training. What do you think the reasons are for doing low stress training?
Well, that is exactly it. Trying to create the most out of your plant. When I first started growing, I remember when I would look into a package of seeds, and on the back it would give you the strain, the contents of the cannabis, but then it would give you a time frame and an average yield. And I was looking at numbers that looked so unobtainable. We're talking 500 grams, 300 grams of some number that went along with those beans. And I tried to figure out how on earth you're going to be able to maximize those numbers. How do you get those numbers? And the best way to do that is to try to pull the most out of the plant. Ensure that you're going to expose more possible tops to get buds from. And you can certainly do that with low stress training. So yeah, to maximize the yield that you're going to get out of the plant by maximizing the size and potential of that plant.
When do you usually start low stress training?
Honestly, it starts really early. When I'm describing this to a new grower, I'm going to tell someone to wait till the third node. It's kind of a rule of thumb, but the reality of it is your plant is going through stresses almost immediately. You're trying to minimize the amount of stress that a seedling goes through, but you can certainly start flexing well after the first node. As soon as you start to see some kind of sprout coming out after your original what are those first leaves called?
Call leading.
Yes, the first note after that, typically you can start to give it a little bend, get a little bit of hands on to start to beefen that stem. So I'll go as early as the first note, after the first note.
Got it. For me, it really depends on growth. It depends on my schedule, right? Sometimes I'm not available to start low stress training that early. But yeah, starting early, I typically like to wait till the third to fifth node, and then I'll start bending the main branch down from there. Now, sometimes, it really depends on growth as well, because some like indica strains, for example, are going to be real naturally squat. If it's more of a stretchy strain, like a sativa stretchy strain, like an OG or something like that, at the third node, the thing's already, 7 to 10 inches tall potentially. Right. So doing it at the third node, is always a potential as well. So for me, it really depends on growth.
I guess that's a good point. It really depends on the sex of seed as well. If you don't know your sex, training that early might not make as much sense. You might be putting in too much effort for something that might not be going the full distance. You might not have a female. So if I'm running regular seeds, typically I'm actually going to start training a little bit later, but then it kind of goes hand in hand with the more training you're almost going to see signs of sex sooner, based on stress. Kind of anecdotal and through my own experience, but if I knew I had a regular seed, a feminized seed, I am going to put stress on that seed a lot sooner than something that I didn't know the outcome of.
Interesting. I actually went to your channel and I saw a video. It directly relates to this, is when to start training. I think you had a plant that you did no training on, and it was like close to 3 feet, maybe 2 feet, 3 feet, and then you manhandled the thing, and it was just straight up, and then you manhandled it and literally brought it in like a swirl coming around. How did that turn out, right? So you had a plant at 3 feet. Goodness. And then just manhandle it and bent it like crazy and then wrapped it all around. And then can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, essentially, you mentioned it earlier when it came down to schedule. Growing your plants relies heavily on your schedule. If you're there, then they're going to benefit a little bit more than if you're not there. This particular plant got, I think it was even upwards of 4 feet high, and this was sheer ignorance. I just let it get the best of me. I kept doing other things. If you have a full flower room, it's easy to let the veg room kind of get a little bit behind where it should be, and that's what happened in this case. And this girl, in fact, it was I believe it was New Dog was the strain. It got way too high, unmanageable, but I knew through experience that this wasn't something to be worried about. I knew that I could bring this to a size manageable, something that I could deal with. And my first response was to bend it in half. Take that 4 feet and turn it into 2 feet, because at least now I'm an indoor grower, so I don't have the sky. The sky's not the limit for me. So I decided to manipulate that stem, and at 4 feet, we're talking about a stem that's already almost maybe an inch and a half thick already, and with no training. And I decided to just really manipulate that stem, get it nice and loose. And as you really started to break that membrane, she started to just fall over on her own. And then it was just a matter of just getting her down, tying her to the pot, and ensuring that all that undergrowth was going to start coming upwards. And as a matter of fact, I still have I refer to it as the antlers of the stem that was the New Dog. I trimmed it up, and it still sits in a back room in the house because I'm so attached to that one. I'm not ready to get rid of her. I'm trying to think if I should lacquer her up and put her up as like a trophy on top of the garden or something,
Right.
But,
put it in an enclosed case.
Right. She yielded wonderfully. I didn't weigh my harvest, but we got quite a few jars off of that girl. I'd say in and around the half to 3/4 of a pea. So it was a good haul. I was a happy camper.
So that was beneficial for you. So would you say that there's
Totally.
it's never too late to start low stress training?
No. No, absolutely not. Never too late. No, absolutely not. You can go hands on at any time. And in fact, even when you're in flower, I would still suggest going hands on for at least the first few weeks to ensure that, while the plant's using up those starches and those sugars and enjoying that stretch, that it's not going to become too uneven, that you're having some flowers that are closer to the light and some that aren't, So no, it's never too late. Never too late. The plant should be just the way you want it before you put it into flower. And if that means you need to train it at week 8, 12, or 15 in veg, then you got to get her done. You got to get her done.
I did that one time where I bent a branch down when it was a similar situation. I don't think it was as big as what you mentioned. And it was very unstable. The plant ended up being very unstable. And that main stem still continued to be the main stem and had the largest bud. And the thing was just flopping all over the place. Did that happen with yours or no?
No. Once I bent her over, it was imperative that I gave those other stems as much. Here I am. This is the technique I use on the stems. I roll them through my fingers. I do this all the time. I walk through the garden in the mornings and roll all these little stems through my fingers. I must roll, upwards of 100 stems a morning as I just come through the garden with my coffee. And the idea was, with that particular girl, once she was flipped over, was to just manipulate all those shoots, all those tops, to ensure that none of them got left behind. But then we have to remember that sometimes not every top is going to be a potential bud. You've got to just get rid of some. You've got to keep her clean. You've got to keep your canopy fresh, open, and available for to take in fresh air. And if you're keeping every single top, you're going to have some buds that are huge, some that are small, and it's important to get hands on all of those individual buds so that they all get that strength that they need.
Got it. I'll link that video in the description section below. So for anybody who wants to see that, I definitely recommend you click on that video and check it out, because it's pretty crazy. I was blown away with what you did with that thing. I was laughing a little bit because I was like, "What the heck?"
It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun, and yeah, the story of the new dog. That one, I remember that. She was a good one. That was a good one. It was a lot of fun.
Cool. Okay, so low stress training. So what exactly do you do? So I'll start. So I'll typically do that initial first bend when it's on, roughly its fifth node, right? Like I said, it depends on growth, and I'll bend that down, and then really, it normally only really takes like a week, 10 days, maybe 2 weeks before you have to actually bend down other branches as well. So for me, I'm continually bending down branches and tying them down. And as a new main shoot kind of comes up and dominates, I'll bend that down, and I'm constantly tying things down and just trying to make the canopy even at all times. And I'll continue to do that all the way up really into flowering. And then that 3-week stretch, I'll still continue to do less stress training. I'll still continue to pull down those branches, tie them down in order to try to keep an even canopy. And I found that really that first 3 weeks when you flip to flowering, when the plant is still stretching, is kind of like the hardest, in my opinion, to still control and create an even canopy. I feel like it's a lot easier when the plant is in veg, just because a plant can grow, like 2 inches overnight or something like that.
That's right.
So it's a little bit harder to control, in my opinion, but that's kind of when I stop, is really after that stretch. Now, what do you do? How long do you do low stress train, and when do you stop it?
I'm very similar in terms of the starting early with that initial bend. I don't do I have, but I try to refrain from tying down or pinning down. Now I do take coat hangers, metal coat hangers, and I cut them up so that you can keep the metal pins, and I can put those to use as pins for the shoots to kind of keep them towards the soil. But generally, I feel as if you can get in there every day, every second day, let's be real, and twist and bend those tops, you're going to turn a very small stem into a very thick stem very, very quickly. When you do pin them down, there's still that same effect, but I do feel as if you can, every time a top rises up, and sometimes it can only take 3 hours, 4 hours, maybe a little bit longer, from going from a flat bend to being straight up again. If you can get back in there and keep bending that down, I think that's far more beneficial than tying it down, leaving it, coming back, tying down, leaving it, coming back, but that would be more, that's just, I guess, more my technique than anything else. I certainly utilize both techniques when it comes to pinning and or bending when it comes to your schedule. This whole at-home virus, this 2020, has allowed me to do a lot more in garden work than I have ever been able to do. So I'm kind of learning these little techniques over the last few months that I didn't necessarily know before. But when it comes to as early as training, that initial bend, typically it's hands-on, bend it down, still twisting, and there's that finger thing, still twisting each stem, and just making sure that each stem, from going straight up at the end of my visit, looks like something stepped on it. I don't want any tops pointing to the sky when I leave the flower room after a good low stress training in the morning, because then I feel like I've gotten everything taken care of. So as early as I can, hands on, and then same thing, that 3 weeks. And you're right, it is the hardest, because you're growing in the veg room over the course of, well, in my case, is 3+ months of vegging, whereas you're seeing growth over 3 months. You can see a month's worth of growth in just a couple days in the flower room. And if you're not quick on the hands-on, next thing you know, you've got 9 inches in between your flower points, or in between your bud sites. So I totally agree. In terms of that, 3 weeks is just as important, or more important, to ensure that you can maintain all that hard work that you put in throughout the rest of the flower room. So I totally agree. The last time I'm training, you're still tucking leaves and trying to separate buds. You don't want any buds stuck together. So I still think that in some sense is low stress training, just to ensure that these buds they're in their own isolated environment. You don't have 2 buds that are stuck too close together. You don't have a leaf that say drooped right on top of a bud. Personally, I would not remove that leaf. I think that's a high stress training. I would just tuck that leaf underneath that bud so that there's no moisture or any trapped air inside that bond.
Got it. You bring up a good point with the hand bending. I use ties. I mentioned how I use ties, but there have been grows where all I did was hand bending. So I go in there and just use my hand, and you have to do it like 2 or 3 times a day. But hand bending down and continuing to bend down, and you'll see those other branches come up. And I've done plants, several grows, where I just do hand bending and no ties whatsoever. So it is still possible to do low stress training without actually using ties. What do you use for ties when you use ties? You said you use coat hangers? Coat hangers,
and I think that's that's a underutilized item in our households. Now, granted, metal coat hangers are kind of going out with the times, and we're more of the plastic coat hangers. Now, granted, I'm sure you could you could manipulate a plastic coat hanger to do the same thing, but metal coat hangers have really got me through, because it's like I find these things everywhere. I've got hundreds of metal coat hangers. Now, they don't last forever. They do corrode, and they do eventually go bad. But just to cut a coat hanger, you cut the bottom and the middle, and you cut the top. You just take the 2 sides. You can even take the hook and cut that off and use that as a hook as well. However, I primarily use either they're like mechanic ties, or like pipe ties or something. They're like a twist tie, but they're rubber. And my viewers have told me they're a mechanic's twist tie of sorts.
Okay.
And or garden wire. Typically like just a twist tie, a roll of twist tie. And aside from that, that's it. And my hands.
Yeah, that's mostly what I use, is those garden ties. I think it's like $2 at your local gardening
for a roll
store.
Of them, right?
Yeah, for the whole roll, like the green tie.
Yeah, it lasts forever.
Tie.
Yep.
And you can just take off those ties and reuse them. So
exactly,
forever.
Exactly.
But I mostly use that. And when I tie the branch, what I do is I'll wrap that tie around like a loop, like a double wrap, but I won't actually like twist the ties together, because as that branch grows thicker, the way I do it, because I'm just continuing to wrap it, it'll unravel on its own, right? So it doesn't like choke up the stem. I don't know if I'm explaining that clearly enough. But just kind of wrapping it around twice, and then as it expands, well, then it's unraveling the tie. Now you have to adjust every now and then, but just a small tip so people aren't choking out their
And you
stems
totally
there.
will. That's a great tip. I still choke out my plants because it's like you'll forget about a tie. You know what I mean? You'll come in, make sure I'm moving ties all the time, but as the plant gets larger and the more ties you put down, you're gonna forget one.
Yeah.
And so wrapping them, that's a good idea. That's a good idea. I've choked out plants way too many times.
Yep. And then, so on fabric pots, I think common thing that beginners might be wondering is how do I tie this down to a fabric pot? And what
Mm.
I usually do is I'll take like a bobby pin and I'll pierce the side of the fabric pot and then, close off that bobby pin and then take that twist tie and then attach it to the bobby pin. That's what I do for fabric pots. I've seen some things with Velcro that actually wrap all the way around the fabric pot, and then you can take the Velcro and go up and bring the branches down.
Mm.
If I have a link to that, I know KoopMed uses that. Shout out to KoopMed. He's a grower. If I can find the link to that, I'll link that down below. And then for plastic pots, I usually use those binder clips. Just really, when you're doing low stress training, just whatever you can find,
That's
right?
it. That's it.
Like,
I use
some people,
paper clips myself
yeah,
around a fabric pot. Put a bunch of
okay,
paper clips around it, and then I just tie to the paper clip. Yep, same
perfect,
idea.
yeah.
Whatever you can find.
Yeah, I
That's
know
that's
some
key.
people drill holes in the plastic pots. I mean, whatever you want to do, right? So whatever you have available, really. What about you? Anything else to add, kind of, for that?
No, that's it. I'm exclusively fabric pots. I don't use anything aside from a fabric pot, and it's been that way for years. So I don't know anything different. But yeah, it's the paper clip. Put the paper clip in. You're gonna put about. You'll see it in that new dog video. Actually, as a matter of fact, if anyone checked the description after the video, there was probably 20 some paper clips all the way around that pot, and I just tied.
Nice.
Yep. Now the downside, of course, as the plant gets stronger, and they are incredibly strong, they will pull the paper clips out of the fabric pot. So you gotta be vigilant. You have to be vigilant.
Anything else for low stress training?
I think it's necessary. I don't avoid it. Get hands on and manipulate your plants to increase yield. It's a necessary. You can really 40%. I think if that's the statistic, I think that's an understatement in terms of the amount of yield you'll increase by doing training. I think it's upwards of 70% in some cases. But yeah, get hands on. Do low training.
I disagree. I would say it's necessary. Like, as a new grower, you don't have to do low stress training, but it's
Good point.
extremely
Okay,
beneficial.
Good
It's
point.
extremely
Yes, good point.
beneficial.
Yeah, good point. That's a good point. Good point.
Cool. Topping. Let's talk about topping. So topping. What is topping? Topping, really, just straight basically, is just pinching off or cutting off a piece of the plant. Usually it's that main stem that comes off. And then what happens from there is it'll kind of split into two, and it will have two tops, right? Is that kind of your definition of it as well, or?
Yeah. Not only are you you're promoting undergrowth as well. You remove a top, you're going to get two tops, and
Yep.
then you're going to see an excess amount of energy promoted to the undergrowth of the plant as well.
Great point.
But yes.
Great point. So for me, I usually wait until it's like on its fifth node, then I'll top down to, well, actually, sorry, there's two ways to kind of top, is the pinching method, and then there's also the cutting method, where I like to call it a hard top, is where you're actually taking, trimmers and trimming off the stem. I've done both techniques. The pinching off is super easy. Just take your hands and pinch off. I kind of like to do the hard top or cutting. Usually when I'm pinching, I'll just wait and then pinch at that fifth node. If I'm doing a hard top, I'll wait till it's fifth node and hard top down to the third node. For me, similar to LST, it depends on growth, right? A real stretchy strain, I'm going to do a hard top down because I might have other plants in the garden which are slower growers. And so trying to kind of keep that canopy even between all the plants. So as far as, when I top, how I top, it really kind of depends on growth. What about you?
When I first started training, topping is something that I did all the time. As I've become more efficient in my growing, I don't top at all anymore. I bend. I find bending does a very similar has a very similar technique, a very similar effect when it comes to promoting undergrowth and creating strong stems. Once you start training your plants, you start to utilize I find when you're not training a plant, the energy is focused at the top of the plant. I don't think there's anything new about that. The energy goes up. When you start bending that plant, the energy is now being delivered to more than just the top of the plant. When you're now seeing a promotion of growth in that undergrowth or the other anything other than the top. I think that's a very similar effect that when you have a topping is you remove the top, you then have two tops, but then you have a promotion of undergrowth. Now, I've just not found topping to be as beneficial anymore when it comes to training. Bending has a very similar effect, and I end up, when it comes to being, say, 2.5 to 3 months into veg, I'm removing tops at this point because I have too many, not because I want more. I have way too many. So it's through training, you're going to be removing tops just to keep a clean canopy. So if that's the same thing, I'm not entirely sure, but not much of a topper anymore.
Yeah, I mean, you bring up a great point, right? So topping is HST, high stress training, right? So it's a high stress training technique. You're doing physical damage to the plants. So really, if you're cutting off the top of the plant's going to use some of that energy for recovery, right? So it could, slow down the growth. And most likely going to slow down the growth a little bit, right? Like a day or two, whatever it takes to recover. So bending down, arguably, just doing LST, arguably isn't going to slow down that growth, right? So
just reverts
faster veg time.
That's right.
Arguably. Yeah. But yeah, I'll do a combination of topping and low stress training. So maybe, I'll top at the fifth node, for example, and then I'll bend all those branches down and then just do low stress training for the remainder of the time. So some plants, I'm just doing that one top of the fifth node and then spreading out all those lower branches. I've done other techniques where I top down, like I said, wait till the fifth node, top down to the third node, and I'll remove the first node, leave the second node. There's so many different things you can do, right? So I really recommend people to kind of experiment with topping and low stress training, all these different training techniques that we talk about, because there's so many different ways to do it. But yeah, I've done both. I like to top, and also I've done multiple tops. So I do that first initial top, then I wait a week or so, and then do another top of those tops, and then kind of wait till those branches develop. So topping, so I get, 8 main colas coming up, or I could top a third time and get 16 main colas coming up. I've done as much as 32 main colas coming up on one plant. So there's just so many ways to do it, and I definitely recommend people to kind of experiment with that.
That's true. Experimenting is key. Experimenting is key, regardless of what you hear from myself or yourself. Is that you're gonna find a way that works for you by blending a bunch of the techniques. I did the same thing. I started by doing a bunch of topping. I thought it was the best way to go. Topping, get all the tops, and then when people asked how many times do you top, I ended up only topping 2 times. I would do the initial top and then maybe one more top after that, and then just kind of weaned out to. I find I was getting a similar technique with just the bending. So that's it. Experiment, get your hands dirty. These plants are resilient. It's wonderful that we can discuss a low stress training and a high stress training. That's pretty special. So get your hands dirty, get your hands on, and maximize the yield, maximize the potential.
And you could literally, if you just have one of those plants where it's just growing straight up and really you're not getting much side branching at all, if you're a beginner and you're kind of worried about, doing a topping, you could literally just do that one top and that plant is going to bush out. You don't have to do any additional training on top of that, and the plant is going to bush out just from one initial topping and no additional training.
And that feeling in your heart of insecurity and unknowing, the unknown of what's going to happen when you that's normal. That's normal. You're going to get over it, and it's going to be okay. Because I'm sure it happened to you on the first time that someone told you to chop the top of your plant off. You were like, what? It's going to be okay. And that feeling deep down is normal. I want that to be known.
Man, anything else on topping? There's not much else to it, right?
No, I think it's pretty straightforward. Yeah.
How about FIMing? Have you ever done FIMing?
Yeah, I think inadvertently when you try to top, and I'll let you to actually describe the acronym and what it is, but because a lot of people, the idea of what FIMing is and what it stands for, don't actually go hand in hand. People have no idea. I know I didn't when I learned the technique, but I think inadvertently you end up FIMing often when you're topping, and it's a very similar technique, but you haven't completely removed the initial top. So there's a little bit of life there to keep going, and in terms of the energy that's being provided. But yeah, I've certainly practiced it. One of the same things with topping, though, it's just kind of gone by the wayside with time.
Got it. Yeah. So FIM or FIM stands for I missed. That's actually what it stands for. Google it if you don't believe me. Really, the name comes from somebody trying to top, but when they pinched off the top, they missed. So they didn't actually top off entirely. So they just pinched that top growth. And what happened, instead of just splitting out in 2 different directions, it went to 4 different directions, I believe. I've actually filmed and went off 3 different directions. Mm-hmm. So, just cutting off, not actually like pinching off the entire top, but just kind of pinching off almost the entire top. It could lead to, it's hard to get accurate, actually. I feel like it's hard to
especially
exactly.
It's so small.
Yeah,
so
it's hard to get that perfect spot to where it's going to split out into 4 different branches instead of just 2. But yeah, I've done it accidentally too. I thought I topped right, and then it turned out to be a FIM, which was, it's kind of cool. I don't know, but
it's almost harder to miss. It's almost harder to miss than it is to get it right.
Right.
You know, like to get that right miss so that it gives you those tops, those extra tops. It's almost harder to get it wrong than it is to get it right. You know?
So that not FIM isn't something that I often practice, to be honest, but I would love to hear from the viewers. How many of you guys try to FIM on purpose? Let us know down in the comment section below, and let us know like when you try to FIM as well.
That's a good question.
There's so many different ways to do it, right? What node do you like to FIM at to get the best result from? So anything on that? Anything else on FIMing?
No, you nailed it, man. You nailed it. Not something I practice myself, but again, something to experiment with. There's so many different techniques, and I think that's the joy of being a gardener in 2020 is that people are trying everything now, and you can almost go and check someone out who's doing it, and you'll find someone and then pick up some techniques.
Have you ever heard of no technique plant training?
No.
Never heard of that?
No technique. No, you'd have to explain because maybe it's not as simple as it sounds.
Yeah, so I came across this on the website that was talking about it. All it is basically taking that main branch, bending it down 90 degrees, and that's it. No other training on top of that. So just taking that initial branch, bending it down 90 degrees, and then, of course, the lower branches and stuff are going to grow up. So I thought that was pretty interesting. It's something actually when I was looking at some training websites or websites talking about training right before, we're talking here today, I came across that, and I was curious to know if you had ever heard of that, because it's something that I really hadn't heard that before, and I don't really know anybody who just bends it down 90 degrees.
Right, but, and sorry, go ahead.
But that is another form of training.
I don't know. Just because I've never tried it, you can't knock it. Not in this industry. But initially, I think the first bend, fantastic. But I feel like those under branches still need some sort of attention in order to give you that maximization or maximized potential of the plant. Now I'd be curious though, are you bending it at 3 nodes? Are you bending it at 3 feet? I'd be curious because maybe at 3 feet, if you bend that over, those branches are a little farther along, but I'd be assuming pretty stretched. But techniques, learn something every day. It's exciting.
Okay, what about super cropping? Let's move on to super cropping. Do you want to explain? I know I've seen that on your channel before. Do you want to explain what that is? Or you want me to do it?
Yeah, go ahead. Keep consistent, and then I'll go with your definition.
Okay, so super cropping is really just, I guess you're kind of breaking that outer layer of the plant's, the cell membrane or whatever you want to call it, and kind of making it flop over. So some people do that. Normally, I typically do it when it's during that 3-week stretch period, and I'm having trouble controlling the stretch, or if I want to kind of keep that canopy even in some sense, I'll go ahead and I'll, just like you were doing it, right? Kind of manipulating that, breaking off that outer layer, and then flopping it down. And then as the things flop down, it allows the lower branches to kind of catch up, and that thing will, it'll pop back up. Nope, that branch is going to pop back up. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of a poor definition, but that's kind of...
No, that's really it. And honestly, if there is a technique that I follow the most, it's super cropping. It's exactly that. Now, some might argue that it's just the main branch, that you're super cropping. And sure, if that's the definition of super cropping would be the main branch, then sure, yeah, I certainly exercise that as well. But the manipulation of the cell membrane, and someone in the comments can tell us what that. There's a name, I know what it is. But anyways, when you break that cell membrane, I guess it could be argued too that that is high stress training.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
For sure, and that is a practice that I think needs to be utilized in the garden, or at least if you want to get the numbers to which that that particular seed can, or that strain can harvest, then super cropping is where you're going to get that. I feel that the manipulation of the stem is what seriously reinforces the structure, which then supports the flower at the very end. The bigger, the stronger that stem is, the more dense. They go hand in hand. If you've got limp, loose, light stems, you're going to have loose, light, limp flowers. It's literally hand in hand. The stronger the plant is in veg, the stronger the plant's going to be in flower, environment excluded kind of thing. You know what I mean? Variables excluded. But super cropping is the technique that I'd like to utilize the most. Every single day, I come in the garden and manipulate my plants during veg, and then less manipulation of it during the stretch, more of just anytime you want to bend the stem, you can't just come into your flower room and just bend it over. You need to manipulate it. Now, how much you want that bent in flower, I don't want it to lay flat in most cases. I just need it to come down in inches rather than to come flat. So super cropping, great technique, and one I utilize almost the entirety of the grow.
So I only utilize it when I need to kind of create that even canopy, and I feel like low stress training isn't an option anymore, because maybe it's like that center branch in the middle, and it's like, well, I can't really pull it down with the other branches, so I'll super crop. Are you saying you do super cropping in order to strengthen the stems?
Yeah, every bud,
Wow.
every stem.
Wow.
When I come, if you've watched a time lapse on my video, all the plants start, or even a training, all the plants start very high up. They're all very perky, pointed towards the light. That's when I will come in and I'd say it's like a 60-40 in terms of bending and twisting. I want those like once you bend those when you start bending your plants, you're going to find very quickly that there's going to be stronger stems on the outside, just through nature itself without the training, and you're going to have weaker ones in the middle. Going through the middle branches is where I'm exercising that technique the most, to make sure that they're going to keep up with the outer branches, so that I'm going to have similar buds throughout the entirety of the plant. Yeah, I think I would say yes.
So when do you start super cropping?
The moment I'm going to make that first bend. The moment I'm going to bend it in veg would be the moment I start to super crop. You're going to start to manipulate that stem. I don't know if breaking is the right way to describe it all the time. If super cropping is the technique of breaking the stem, you can hear it snapping. I don't think I do that all the time, but the idea of stretching that membrane and manipulating enough that it falls over is more the technique that I follow. But breaking it is just another way of getting it done.
Yeah. So when do you stop it then? When's the last time you super crop, really?
Typically, like if it's going, like it'll be late veg, because typically I've got by the time I'm sending to flower, I've created the canopy that I'm happy with. So then I'm sending it to flower. At that point, when it comes to keeping the canopy even, it's more of just a light manipulation of the stem. So I would say it's still within the first couple of weeks of flower. Still trying to make sure, because like I said, by the time you're flowering your plant, your stems are really thick. They're very heavy, and they've almost built up like not a bark, but like just an outer core. And if you were to come up to that branch and just try to get it to go flat with the rest of the canopy, it's going to snap in half, and you're going to lose it without taping it back together. So you're going to have to kind of rub it in your fingers just to get that stem to bend down a little bit. So first couple weeks of flower. Do
you have a tutorial video on your channel that I can link?
Oh, yes.
Okay, yeah. I'll link that in the description section below for everybody out here. So during that 3-week stretch period in flower, you really don't do super cropping?
No, I wouldn't say to the extent that I am in veg every day. No, no,
Okay.
no, because I'm hoping by the time I've sent it to flower, all of the effects that I've done in veg are enough that those stems are good. Like they're tight, they're built, they're robust, they're strong. Any bending that goes on in flower is just merely to keep the canopy flat.
Got it.
You might even tie down still in flower to make sure that it's, but I wouldn't say that I continue super cropping in flower.
Okay. Got it.
As intense.
Yep.
That's as Canadian answer as you're gonna get right there. I think I went both ways 3 times.
And arguably, I mean, somebody is probably going to comment on this and say you don't want to do
Of
any
course.
sort of high stress training in flower, right? I mean, you can, but arguably, any high stress
that's
training,
taken away.
yeah, your plant will then focusing on the repair process instead of the bud formation process. So I try to avoid doing any type of high stress training techniques like that or topping in the flowering stage, but I do it just to try to create that canopy even as like a last.
You've got to
effort.
do what you got to do to
Yeah.
keep that canopy even, because
Yep.
that's what's going to reward you in the long run.
And I found I need to do it whenever I do like a trellis and try to like do like the scrog technique. You know, I find like during that 3-week stretch period in flower, I don't have the chance to bend down it anymore to get under the netting anymore. So I'll super crop.
Right.
So that's just another time I do it. Anything else on super cropping?
Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. It's another one of those techniques that it's very aggressive. It's very hands-on.
Yeah.
These plants are resilient, and it's almost the more abuse at the right time is going to reward you. They can handle it.
Well, I think we covered a lot in this video.
Man, this was good. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, good stuff. So thank you so much, Pigeons, for coming on to my channel and discussing training techniques. I think that this is definitely some good information, again, for the people viewing this. And I've got beginners, I've got veterans that are viewing this. There's so many different ways to do it. Just experiment. And yeah, just try to have fun with it, right?
That's the key. Have fun, because there's already enough stresses, let alone in the world. There's enough stresses in the garden that'll keep you preoccupied. We don't need to we don't need to create any more unnecessary stress. Have fun, relax, and it's quite the experience. And anything that you experience through this grow is going to seriously help you in the next grow. So get your hands dirty. And Chris, I want to thank you for having me. As I said at the beginning, this form of interview, this kind of content is a shining light for our community, and I look forward to seeing what else and who else you can have over and the information you can pull from them. Much needed. And I want to hear from in the comments too. You know, whether you agree or disagree. What are your techniques? Because like I said, we've been here for almost an hour, 40 some minutes, but it's like we haven't even scratched the surface. We haven't even scratched the surface in terms of the techniques and the numbers of ways of getting it done. So
Absolutely.
more content for the future.
Yep. And yeah, another question for the viewers is, who would you like me to kind of have a discussion with next, right? So I talked with Rob from CLTV. We've got Pigeons here. I want to get more growers involved in these types of conversations, because there's so many different perceptions on ways to do things. It's going to generate ideas for people, right? So let me know who you want to see on this channel in the future. And I will leave a link to Pigeon's channel down in the description section below.
Thank you very much.
Any final words?
No, thanks for having me, man. A lot of fun. I appreciate it, and I look forward to seeing the success of your channel. And it's been an honor being a colleague of yours, bro.
Thank you. I really appreciate you coming on. All right.
Take care, man. Thanks, guys.